Welcome, everyone. I'd like to call the August the 11th, 2025 meeting of the El Dorado Irrigation District Board of Directors to order. Please stand and join me in the pledge. Ready? Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Would you like me to do roll call?
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Directors Penn, Mansfield, Dwyer, Anzini, and Day present. General Manager Vandiar, General Counsel Polson, and Clerk to the Board Sullivan present, as well as outgoing General Manager Abercrombie.
Thank you. When you said ready, I was ready. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you. Any discussion? Any public comment on the agenda?
If members of the public would like to address the board, please refer to the detailed instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. President Dwyer, it doesn't appear any members of the public are wishing to speak on the adoption of today's agenda, moved by Director Penn and seconded by Director Anzini. I believe we're ready for the vote.
Okay, please vote.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you. General Manager comments.
Good morning. I have awards and recognition item. The district received an email from an EID customer named Randy Hartgrove expressing his appreciation for the outstanding service provided by Justin Stockwell and Walter Zimmerman, construction and maintenance workers in the wastewater division. He stated that during their visit to his property, Justin and Walter addressed the issue with professionalism and care, successfully resolving the issue. Mr. Hartgrove shared his gratitude for their friendly demeanor, concern, and commitment to finding a solution, noting that he was highly impressed by both their work and the district as a whole. This reflects our commitment to excellent customer service, one of our guiding principles, and we commend Justin and Walter for their dedication and positive impact they made on our customers' experience. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes. In public comment, is there any public comment on items that are not on the agenda today?
If members of the public would like to address the board, please refer to the instructions in today's agenda on page 2. President Dwyer, it does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to communications. Parvani, do you have any other general manager comments?
Nothing today.
Thank you. Jennifer, do you have any comments from the clerk?
None today.
Okay, thank you. And fellow board members, yes, Director Anzini.
Yes, can you hear me now? There I am. I did attend last week's Mountain County Water Agency reception and then joined in the next day for our board meeting there. And there's a new, of course, there was many new faces that were there. And I look forward to the next one, which will probably be in October, I think. And we will look forward to introducing our new general manager to the group there. Several of the people there were talking about different items, and of course, one in the October meeting that we'll have, there will be a tour up at the Placer County Water Agency. And I would encourage you to attend. It would be great. But that's my report.
Question for you. Did I just see that Nevada County had
Yes.
joined the mountain counties?
Yeah, this is a
good.
big coup to have Nevada, and they were there.
Okay.
So it's, they're in, when you look at both of our agencies, we're very similar in many ways. So we have a lot to share with them.
Good. Thank you for the report. Any other board member comments? Yes.
Yeah, last week I attended the National Night Out in Camino. Former directors Osborne and Veerkamp were in attendance as well, so the district was well represented. Multiple local, state, federal agencies that we often interface with were there, so it was a wonderful networking opportunity. And boy, did my kids love the assets that the sheriff's office and CAL FIRE brought. So a special thanks to our first responders. Great event for children, family friendly, and a good opportunity to meet a lot of local leaders.
Thank you. Director Penn? Okay. Moving along, consent calendar. Do I have a motion? Is there any items that need to be pulled from the consent calendar?
Yes, I would like to have item number 4 pulled.
Thank you. Any other?
I'll move the consent calendar absent item 4.
Thank you.
I'll
Director
second.
Day. Thank you. Director Mansfield, any public comment on the consent calendar?
If members of the public would like to address the board, please refer to the instructions in today's agenda. President Dwyer does not appear. Any members of the public are wishing to speak on the approval of today's consent calendar minus consent calendar item number 4, moved by Director Day and seconded by Director Mansfield. I believe we're ready for the vote.
Okay, please vote.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye, motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Okay, item 4, Director Anzini.
Yes, I wanted to address a question towards our legal analyst. The issue of having a contract, a master agreement with the El Dorado County, is it normally a 15-year agreement that we are stuck with? Or is it normally that long of a term that we would have in agreement with El Dorado County?
The term, I don't recall off the top of my head what the term of the contract is, but the intent, this contract was originally negotiated in 2012.
Right.
It was subsequently amended in 2015, and the intent is to make it easier for the county and EID to work together on projects in which one of us is in the way. Sometimes their roads are in our way. Sometimes our pipelines are in their way when they're doing projects. So this is a contract that allows us to work cooperatively upfront on small projects that are less than $100,000. So the intent is to have this arrangement be, undefined into the future unless, and because it can be changed at any point in time with the agreement of both parties. So is it normal to have a 15-year term in a contract? Generally, no. But this is an agreement that the board has determined really benefits us. So if that gives you some concern, we can certainly go back to the county and try and address that term, but that's the intent.
Yeah, I guess my question was, the first one was 2012.
I can help clarify
Oh,
that.
okay.
So again, John Money, Director of Engineering. So it is an actual, the 15-year is from the date of the original contract. So it's extending that the full contract to a total term of 15 years. This is a 5-year extension. So the original contract was for 5 years. We did a first amendment, which was for another 5 years, and this is the second amendment. So those together, that's the total 15 years. So it's a 15-year contract. We're
Okay.
extending that original contract up to 15 years, but this is only a 5-year extension.
So ultimately, what could happen is, in 5 years from now, we re-amend it or whatever.
Correct, and then would it be the 20-year from the, yeah, so we do it in 5-year increments.
Yeah, and $100,000, I as a cap,
It's
it sounds like 5 years from now, that would be maybe a pothole.
Yeah, we should probably look at that long term. I mean, really what this is for doing exactly that. It's raising valve covers or manholes or whatever is in association with the county projects. And what this allows us to do again is, instead of us having to bid that work as a separate project,
Okay.
we pay for basically the bid items in their contracts, and we just have them bid it and negotiate that way. So
And then they reimburse us for items that they have to do.
correct. If it was opposite, if we were we had prior rights and there's a small segment of road. Again, usually this is more on our maintenance end, operations crews, larger projects like Motherlode Force Main. We have separate contracts that we bring and ratify with the board. So
Okay, thank you for specifically giving that information. I appreciate it. So I'll move approval.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Paul. Yes. Any other board comments on this item? Is there any public comment on the agreement with the county?
If any members of the public would like to address the board, please refer to the detailed instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. President Dwyer does not appear. There are any members of the public wishing to speak on consent calendar item number 4, option 1, moved by Director Anzini and seconded by Director Penn. I believe we're ready for the vote.
Okay, great. Please vote.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Moving on to information item number 7. Dan.
All right, good morning, President Dwyer, members of the board. Dan Corcoran, Operations Director. So this morning, staff has a agenda item in response to actually a board requested earlier this year in response to the wildfires in Southern California. And that is just to provide an overview of how the district prepares for and handles emergency conditions. Next slide, please. There are 3 relevant board actions to today's information item. First, about 20 years ago, the district became part of what's called Cal Warren. I'll explain that in more detail in a minute. And then, I guess that was 30 years ago. Boy, time flies. I'm sorry. And then 20 years ago, the district adopted what's called the National Incident Management System. And what that is the district's use of consistent terminology following, unfortunately, the September 11th attacks, realizing the importance of using standard terminology when responding to emergency conditions associated with our partners. And then most recently in spring of last year, the district adopted its most recent local hazard mitigation plan. Next slide. As I mentioned, we're here today at the board's request, and I thought that was an applicable photo, right? So we all know when emergency, but do you know what to do? And that's really what we're going to talk to today, of the instructions of what to do in emergency. Next slide. Obviously, emergencies are a normal part of utility operations, right? So emergencies they do occur, but we do plan for, and they are a normal part of our operations. And obviously, as the board's well aware, the district is no stranger to emergencies. Just off the top of my head, I could think of 2 or 3 of each one of these: floods, landslides, fires, droughts. Unfortunately, our area is very used to emergency conditions, and so is our partner first responder agencies. Some of them rise to only an agency-declared emergency, sometimes gubernatorial, sometimes presidential declared disasters, right? So we obviously proactively plan for and practice for these so that when the inevitable does occur, we're prepared to respond. Most of these, fortunately, are accidental, but unfortunately, some can be intentional acts. And most importantly, that our job is to help protect public health and safety. So we anticipate those types of conditions that could occur in association with our first responder agencies and prepare. And our primary job is to protect our safety and the safety of the public. Next slide. Obviously, for operational security purposes, we're not going to go into intimate details, but I provide here just a non-exhaustive list of the general types of emergencies, and these sprinkle throughout the year. Every couple months, something does happen. Fortunately, staff and under the general manager's leadership mitigate most of these just to the normal operational level. So obviously, power outages, communication outages, both on technology, radios, cell phones, natural disasters we spoke to, facility access, security threats, implicit or explicit, chemical hazards, environmental hazards, IT outages. We always have to give our colleague Aaron a bad time, but it's an expected part of operational challenges. Obviously, public safety challenges. We're all keenly aware of active shooter threats, et cetera, threats of violence throughout our community. Lockdown or evacuation type scenarios, and obviously water supply and treatment disruptions, whether acute, such as a break, or even drought type conditions that could rise to the emergency level. Next slide. So I'm going to talk about, I'm going to try to avoid lingo and acronyms as much as possible this morning, but I'm going to talk about 3 plans. The first one is our emergency operations plan. That's what I would call the general guidance document throughout the district that gives a general framework consistent with national terminology of how the district prepares for, prepare, respond, mitigate for the types of hazards that could occur. Obviously, that gets periodically updated as new types of threats, new types of challenges, or we learn from events that did occur. The most recent update occurred about 7 years ago, and we're actually have that next update, our solicitation to have consultant assistance actually out on the street right now. Next slide. So this is where I call the meat and potatoes. So for our emergency action plan, or our EAP as we use internally, those are set by operational division. So our drinking water folks have one, wastewater, hydroelectric, and recreation. And those are designed to give specific response measures that may be applicable to a facility or an operational area. Those are performed in emergencies in conjunction with the larger EAP. But each manager of that respective division would be using those tools specifically to help them address to those hazards. One important note here is we're actually, as part of the next update, we recognize that we did not have an EAP specifically for this facility or those staff that are working out in the field, the types of hazards that they may encounter that aren't necessarily associated with the operational area. And so that will be an improvement we will be doing later this year. Next slide. And then we drill down to the intimate details, and those are called IAPs, or incident action plans. And those are sort of, you hear like rip sheets or tear sheets. Those are designed for the first responders, so that field person, that senior, that chief, potentially an operations supervisor, that gives them the immediate actions when they are acting as an incident commander before we rise to a more potentially significant or widespread event. And so those are each division, has a list of IAPs that detail the specific types of threats that operational area anticipates encountering, and then what those measures are. And that's what our staff actually use to plan when we do functional or tabletop exercises, and we periodically do those at the division level. And one of the things that I think is important here when you think of the larger, let's say the level 3 emergency, which is a very, very large emergency, we may be using these and working with as a part of it under a unified command. You hear that term. Let's say the county opens its emergency operations center. We would have our specific IAPs of how we would support that larger effort. Okay, next slide, please. Mutual aid is an integral and essential part of responding to emergencies. Not any one agency or organization has all the resources, right? And so if you think of the umbrella of the state, so overall at the state has adopted its master mutual aid agreement, which we're part of. That allows us, when we're working under a unified command scenario, we put in I think it's a 213 form, we put in a request for resources. Our incident commander can help find those resources, bring them to the district. Just a simple example of that is during the Caldor fire, we were asked to help support some of the helicopter mobile retardant basins. We happen to have a pump and a generator that we could provide to support the firefighting operations. So it doesn't necessarily need to be within our operational area. We may have resources that could be used elsewhere. What's really important about that is that when using that gives the mechanism for potential cost recovery when there is a state or federal disaster scenario. And then I mentioned WARN or Cal WARN. That is in fact, General Manager Vandiar was talking to me about this on Friday. That is something that was set up about 30 years ago that probably could use a little bit of a revamp. It's a state system. That's the Director Penn acknowledging the same. And that's the expediency and coming up to current technology. You put in a resource request, how quickly that comes back. It has a passive response versus at an emergency level, first responder to first responder, using, if necessary, the state's Cal OES or regional or the statewide response center to help expedite those resources. So while it is a resource, it's recognized as probably not as commonly used today. It could probably use a little bit of a revamp and leveraging our either our local responders or Cal OES to help expedite those resources. Fortunately, we haven't had to use them, but I recall, I think during the Northern California, the lightning storms in 2018, I think it was, or 2017, multiple agencies having staff, looking for licensed staff to operate facilities, potentially small equipment that was damaged during the fire. And so there's an opportunity there to share resources, but fortunately we haven't had to leverage that. Next slide, please. And then drilling down to just the local level. So we have formal agreements that we act within, but sometimes we just work with our neighbors, right? So there's a couple examples I wanted to share with you of where working with our neighbors, potentially subsequent to larger emergency, but when still our partners are in need. So two examples I shared for you this morning. One in the top photo there is our staff working side by side with the remaining staff at Grizzly Fats Community Service District, trying to get their backbone system online, helping identify their isolation valves and distribution, because you recall not all of the town burned, but unfortunately a significant part did. So how do we help them restore service to their customers? Once the smoke's gone and all the fire engines are gone, there's still a community that needs to rebuild. And so we were asked, General Manager Abercrombie was requested and provided resources for us to go help for a couple days over there. We also, their raw water delivery system completely burned up. We had some old pipe that was frankly probably going to go to the trash, that they had an opportunity to leverage that to restore their raw water delivery system. And then the mosquito fire a couple years ago, we reached out proactively actually to our partners, first line to first line cell phone. Hey, is there anything we can provide? They obviously, large scale power outage, small agency, they don't have the type of generators. So our staff went ahead and brought a generator over there to keep their water pumps going during a fire. Pretty essential task. Next slide. We're not always on the giving end. Also provide an example here recently. We had an odd, rather large-sized pipe that we needed a repair ban. We didn't have that in stock, so we called around to our local agency partners. It's something that we're working to update that list at General Manager Vandiar's request to ensure that we always have that first-line contact. 20-inch repair ban is not available at Home Depot, but you need it in 15 minutes, and so that was an example of having those first-line contacts that if it wasn't necessarily a declared emergency, but our job is to prevent it from getting there, and so making those quick calls and getting those resources within an hour, we had it back from Auburn. And then what we do in those types of situations is we just order the item and then have it delivered to them. So those are just examples of things that happen in the background. The board doesn't necessarily hear, but how we handle operations. Next slide. Okay, and the last slide I want to leave you with, the photo here, please, is just an example of, I think we think about how the district responds, but we don't always do this alone. So this is an exercise that we do every few years, I don't think it's every year, we're working with SMUD and PG&E down in Sacramento. So this is a tabletop interagency exercise for dam safety programs, because all three of us have required dam safety obligations. So we're here in SMUD's building. You probably recognize a few of our folks together working with SMUD, PG&E, county OES, sheriffs, and then the first responder agencies down the hill as well. So this is a regular part of our operations. It's not usually all that exciting, although this one we did post on social media just to show that we are responsible and we do emergency preparation. You always think of emergency when it happens. Unfortunately, we have to think about it every day, and this is just an example of that. So. I'm sorry? Oh, yes, and I'm sorry. It's, yes, information only.
Thank you. Any board questions for Dan?
Yeah, no, good presentation. I know it can come down to even the mundane. It sounds mundane, but it can be very important. I know Folsom's lent their pumper truck to us. I think we've done the same as well. When there's a little spill and we need to get it cleaned up quick, and we don't, our other trucks are obligated somewhere else. So even little things like that to keep things working on a day-to-day basis, I think is great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other board questions?
Yeah, so what sort of systems do we have in place to communicate, to the public-facing side, to our ratepayers, if there's emergencies that affect maybe their water quality or availability?
Oh, outstanding question. Thank you. Can you actually go back to the title slide? Sorry, I'm throwing Jen for a loop here because I think it may help answer your question. So when we set up an emergency operations center, during an actual emergency, we do have a dedicated role for public information officer. So that person is in charge under the incident commander, Pravani's leadership, to identify who, when, and how we will make those communications. Obviously, first to our responsive agencies with whom we're working together, but also to ensure we have a uniform message to the public to not cause alarm, but also give the appropriate level of information. In today's day and age in social media, if you don't fill in the gaps, they'll be filled in for you, sometimes incorrectly, which has the inverse intent, right? So I apologize, it's actually quite small because I intended just to be illustrative, but I just wanted, there is a dedicated emergency operations structure following the National Incident Management System where there's a dedicated role for public information officer, as well as a dedicated role for a liaison to a larger emergency operations center. In that case, let's say the county had activated it, we would send one of our staff to be embedded at that center.
So, as a career emergency manager, I am just so grateful that we put the efforts into this, because this is what shows the capability of a public utility, because when things go bad is when they need us the most. And I am, I'm glad that we have actively adopted the National Incident Management System, because during an event, it's not the time to figure out who's who and what's what. It's time to do the work. John Gustafson, who was the executive director of the National Response Team, holds me personally responsible for the National Incident Management System, but that's another story. And to Chuck's comment, most people, they don't really address the public information component prior to an event, but during a real event, it rises to one of the most significant components of managing the event, because you got to get the right information, the right people, the right time, in the right format, so they can make the right decisions. And as Dan indicated, with the proliferation of social media, if we are not first, we're not right, and we're not credible, we lose control of the situation. And just finally, having a robust emergency management program helps in our day-to-day activities. And I think, your example with Placer County just articulates how that can work for us on a day-to-day. It doesn't have to rise, but it also shows the robustness of our overall system. So, thank you.
Any other board comments? I have one, Dan. The genesis of this item was, as you mentioned, the Palisades fire, where the utility district was blamed for dry hydrants and other things. And the question was, can it happen here? And I think your answer was, yes, it can.
Yes.
Just because of the capacity of the system.
Right. Thank you, President Dwyer. So I think everyone recalls, unfortunately, the Palisades and Eaton fire situation in Southern California, and that's an ongoing investigation by the state. There were a couple factors that we see media reports, social media reports of, so wait to the official report. There was some system of maintenance, occurring during that time frame that perhaps some of those facilities were offline. And that is a key aspect of how we schedule projects we bring to you because of that specific need. Having said that, no water system is designed to fight a mass large conflagration of a forest burning up. It's designed for structure protection, as we talked previously.
Thank you. Any public comment on this item, information item?
If members of the public would like to address the board, please refer to the instructions in today's agenda.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And as a director, thank you, ma'am. As Director Manfield described, getting the message out. So one of the, obviously the most common tool right now is the various social media platforms to which the district is subscribed, as well as actually a system we currently use for even scheduled outages now. We use the RAVE system where we do text, phone calls, and emails, and we can do all of those at once. We use those for larger areas or smaller areas, depending upon planned or unplanned events. So that is the way that we reach out. And so we ask customers, please provide us. They don't want to be spammed with email. We understand that. But please provide us your direct contact information and then as well as social media. But in a larger type incident, it would actually be our information would be cross-posted or reposted. I'm not the best social media king here, but by our first response agencies that would then have a magnifying effect to our outreach efforts.
Thank you. Is that, okay.
If I could just expand, so emergency manager in the county is run under the sheriffs, and they have this RAVE system, which is a multimedia system to get information out on many platforms. Recently, they did a test, so I got it as an email, I got it as a text, and I got it as a phone call at my home, just saying this is a test of that system, because everyone gets their information through different sources these days. You know, it used to be, it was very limited. You had TV, radio, and telephone. But now it expands, so that's an attempt to overcome that. It will never be perfect, and as we say in this business, no matter how much you're communicating and coordinating, it's never enough. But it's an attempt to overcome that challenge.
But I think this is a good opportunity to encourage people, all our ratepayers, our customers, members of the public. If you have not signed up for the notification system at the El Dorado County Sheriff's Office of Emergency Service, do it. You know, it's better, I think on the last evacuation, we got notified, like you said, by many different means, telephone, text messages, phone calls. But it's better to be over-notified than not get the message. So I'd encourage everyone to go to the El Dorado County Sheriff's Office of Emergency Services, and it's pretty easy. You click on there and sign up, and that way you'll get notified.
And I think just this past weekend, at least I got an update from Smart 911 asking you to verify your information. So I
Right.
think in light of the number of emergencies we have, they're very good about ensuring your information is current. So.
Yes, it's always tough to keep things current and updated, but it needs to be done. Director Anzini.
So perhaps we need to be more often, put that request out to our ratepayers rather than, what do, once every 6 months? For,
maybe
to
to
notify
make sure I understand
ratepayers,
the
instead of
question.
announcing in public, but also, I know we do it in our bill pay, right? To update your email and,
Oh,
I'm going to phone a friend here because that's not my operational area.
Okay.
So she's going to come up very quickly
yeah,
and
because
rescue
it's
me.
really, and I know Jenny is got a handle on most of it, but I guess the concerns are because the sheriff's office just recently did it, and most of us who participated, by taking the time and updating our information, we got the notification. But ratepayers don't always pay attention to that. And I think that the massive, please, ratepayers, sign up. If you get your bill electronically, which many do, there are some that we miss. And some don't know how to use email. So getting them updated is important.
Jenny Downey, Customer Service Manager. We do probably twice a year through either the waterfront or Bill Message to ask people for our internal information, to update your phone, your email, and if you want to have text, because they have to opt into that. Every time we speak to a customer over the phone, we ask for updated information as well. In conjunction with the county, you have to remember, sometimes their notification supersedes our information because they may have apartment complexes, all the individual units, or we may just have the owner of it. So we do as many notifications as we can to try to get them to update their information. And I believe in the latest waterfront, the one that had just gone out may have had that information as well. So we try to do it at least twice a year.
Okay, thank you.
I think what's important, I think, as President Dwyer mentioned, we want the complaints that we get too many notices and didn't get sufficient. But at the same time, adjust it to my height there. Sorry, Jenny. And so what's also important to remember, though, is that the information we're conveying is potential actual disruptions to water, wastewater service. It's a life or death public health or public safety emergency. That's going to come from our county emergency officials. So.
Yep. Good comment, because that system, the Sheriff's Office Emergency Services Graves system, not only notifies of the water situation if we activate that part, but it also notifies other disasters, fires, evacuations, tsunamis, which we don't have many here in the county. But
Fire tsunamis, fire tsunamis.
yeah, so it's really important to be signed up for that so you get notification of all the issues for public safety and health. Okay. Any other public comment for Dan? No, we put you through the ringer enough.
If there's additional members of the public that would like to address the board on information item number 7, please refer to the detailed instructions in today's agenda. President Dwyer, it does not appear there are any additional members of the public wishing to speak.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to action item number 8, the water supply and demand situation.
Good morning, Board. President Dwyer, Patrick Calvis, Engineering Manager. So today I'm going to be presenting the 2025 Water Supply and Demand Report. And this has been a report that has been brought to the board every 3 years. So starting with previous board actions, in 2019, the board received and filed the then named Water Resources and Service Reliability Report. In 2021, the board adopted a resolution approving the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan, and with it, the Water Shortage Contingency Plan. Then in 2022, the board received and filed the 22 Supply and Demand Report, and here we are 3 years later. So starting off with a summary of issue, as I mentioned, the district prepares this report every 3 years for board consideration. And essentially what we're looking at is our supply, demand, and then importantly arriving at a number of available equivalent dwelling units. As a note, one equivalent dwelling unit, or EDU, represents the water demand associated with a 3/4-inch connection for a single-family residence. And the end goal of this report, quite simply, is to ensure that new meter sales do not exceed available supply. In addition to presenting the findings of that report, today I'll be giving an update on a change to our Administrative Regulation 5010, which will change the reporting frequency interval from every 3 years to every 5 years to be concurrent with our Urban Water Management Plan. And I'll go into more detail on why in future slides. So starting off here, district staff prepare over 20+ reports just focused on water. Those are all required by different internal and external requirements and required to be prepared at different intervals as well. And so in this slide, I'm drawing a comparison between 2 reports. On the left, you see the cover page of the most recent Urban Water Management Plan, and on the right, this year's Water Supply and Demand Report. So the Urban Water Management Plan is a water code requirement. It's required by state statute. It's a very comprehensive report And it's prepared every 5 years and basically looks at supply, demand, and our system reliability projections over 20 years. It also includes the water shortage contingency plan. So comparing that to our water supply and demand report, that is an internal required report, and that's required by AR 5010. It's prepared annually by staff, but presented to the board every 3 years. There's a lot of overlap between the urban water management plan and this report in terms of the scope, but the water supply and demand report has a much more limited scope. It's also looking at supply, demand, and then, as I mentioned before, our meter availability, which is expressed in EDUs.
Patrick, the urban water management plan, is that only for our service area, or is that for the western slope of the county?
It's specific to EID.
Okay,
service
thank
area.
you.
Okay, so now I'm going to jump into the contents of this year's 2025 water supply and demand report. The figure on the right, you can see that for the purposes of this report, we have 2 supply areas defined. We've got the El Dorado Hills to the west in yellow, and the western/eastern to the east in blue. And so the text on the left-hand side from top to bottom, basically what we look at is our total supply. Then we look at total potential demand. Total potential demand consists of active demand, latent demand, which is essentially sold but not yet installed meters, and then other demand. Other demand is quite significant, and it considers things such as our temporary water use program, recycled water supplementation, hydrant flushing, and also water loss. And then the difference between our total supply and our total potential demand is our unallocated supply. And what that represents essentially is our supply available for sale. Next slide, thanks. So I'm going to look at our calculation methodology here and break that down in a little bit more detail. On the left-hand side, we have the calculation for our El Dorado Hills supply area, and on the right, the western-eastern. Again, some of these numbers are the same from the prior slide, but you can see we have supply at the top, the potential demand with the 3 subcategories, active, latent, and other, down below. And then we arrive at our unallocated water supply expressed in acre feet. Converting from unallocated water supply to available EDUs is done by dividing by the 10-year historical average for a single-family home. And so on the left-hand side for El Dorado Hills, you can see that unit demand is 0.53 acre feet per EDU. And for western and eastern supply area, that 0.38 unit demand is a weighted demand between the western and eastern supply areas.
I think it's significant to note on the El Dorado Hills area, actually both areas, but the conversion, the EDU average, the 0.53, it's been trending down. I mean, it used to be like 3/4 of an acre foot and then 2/3 of an acre foot. Now we're almost at a half. So it's pretty significant changes.
Correct. Yep. It has been trending down, and that's fairly common industry-wide, just given, low flow fixtures and whatnot, but good point.
Yeah.
And so lastly on this slide before we move ahead is basically what we arrive at, which is our water meter availability expressed in EDUs. And so the good news is you can see we have over 17,000 and 11,000 available EDUs in our El Dorado Hills and western eastern supply areas respectively.
And those for an average year or a third dry year?
Thank you for bringing that up. I actually meant to mention something. So the supply is based on a 3 consecutive dry year analysis.
Thank you.
Thank you, President Dwyer. All right, looking at a summary table, again, these numbers here you've seen in prior slides. What I'd like to point out is our typical sales. So over the past 5 years, the district has sold on average 316 EDUs per year, and that's across the entire district, with a rough standard deviation of about 100. And so doing some quick math, you can see that based on those historical sales, we have decades plus of available EDUs for purchase.
I have a question. This might be more for our legal people, is how malleable are the what we get from our water rights. So for instance, our water rights out of Folsom, say we're 5 years into a severe drought, how much could our water intake or outtake be restricted?
Yeah, thanks. Great question. The Urban Water Management Plan analyzes the district's supply by the characteristic of each of its water rights. So, for example, in the 3 years of consecutive dry years that Patrick mentioned, if you look at the table in the Urban Water Management Plan that lays out the district's water supply for those years, you'll see that, as an example, the contract-based rights or water supply that we get from Folsom Reservoir, the district's repayment contract water, Bureau of Reclamation repayment contract water, that goes from an average year of 7,500 acre-feet down to something like less than 3,000 during those year types because the planning recognizes the constraints associated with each of those years. So yes, they are taken into account in the planning.
So switching gears here from the report to what I mentioned in the summary of issue about how we're going to change our reporting frequency. So our current state, as I mentioned, we prepare this report annually, but present it to the board every 3 years, and that's in line with Administrative Regulation 5010. In the future, we will track EDUs continuously. We'll report to the board every 5 years, and that will be concurrent with the preparation of the Urban Water Management Plan. And the reason we're doing this and the benefits of why are kind of threefold. So number one, we're going to be aligning the methodology. So as I mentioned, the Urban Water Management Plan and the Water Supply and Demand Report, there's a lot of crossover in terms of the content of the reports, but there's slight variations in the calculation methodology. So one example is the number of historical years that's evaluated to come up with these demands. So being able to align methodology basically presents us with a more consistent evaluation and approach in the future. So that's one benefit. A second benefit is for our external facing letters and documentation that come out of my group, the Development Services Group. We do express our available equivalent dwelling units in those public facing letters. And currently, because of the 3-year frequency that we bring to the board, we present a number that could be up to almost 3 years stale. So by tracking EDUs continuously in the future, we'll have a EDU availability number as of the date of the letter. And then finally, it will reduce our reporting burden. And this was not the primary driver, but as I mentioned before, we have over 20 plus different water reports the district staff prepare. And so in the context of the number of available equivalent dwelling units, it seems appropriate to move this direction.
Yes, Director Day.
Yeah, so if I heard you correctly, then these reports would be, you would do the Urban Water Management Plan and this report concurrent with each other once every 5 years to the board?
Yeah, so we'll bring it to the board every 5 years. This report will not be the same scope as before, but the water meter availability expressed in equivalent dwelling units will be presented to the board. We have not yet determined whether that will be as an appendix to the Urban Water Management Plan or a standalone, much more narrow report. But yes, every 5 years is the plan.
I just have a little concern, and maybe staff can give them some thought to this, that our board terms are 4 years. And I think, you might get a new board member, and that they might be into their second term if they run for a second term before they ever see this. So I would urge caution and suggest that 3 or 4 years or something so that because it's to the board, and I acknowledge there's some burden to reporting it, but it's information you're already gathering and providing anyhow. So I would just encourage you to give some thought to that.
And we do have an option as well. We'll be rolling this out, next year with the preparation of the 2025 Urban Water Management Plan. There's room for variation on what we want to move forward towards. We have an option to post it publicly as well. So I think it's a good point, and we can discuss further.
We'll take that point back and have discussion and figure out what can be done, and we'll bring something back to you.
It could be part of the general manager's report, State of the Union thing that says, here's how much, so that could be an annual thing.
Just as a side note, during the drought years, we were getting regular water report updates. And I found that extremely enlightening and educational and useful. And we haven't done them as often, I know, because can be a burden, but I do miss them somewhat, so.
Director Anzini.
And I think along with Director Day's concerns, I agree. I mean, I've been here 7 years and we've only had one or two, maybe one of these reports. I think it's important for board members to be able to relay the information, because there is many times we go to events and people ask us, what about the water issue in my area? And what are you supplying and how are we doing? And it's actually really important for your board to be informed enough. Sometimes we don't relay it the way you want it to be because the technical part of this, but it's really important for us to be able to bring that forward. And I guess I would leave it up to the general manager to make sure we're well informed on these policies, because we have a constituency that stays informed, and we want to be just as informed as they are. So, thank you.
A couple points before we move on. So it's not in the slide here, but we will have a fail-safe, if you will, in the administrative regulation update. And that's if at any point in the future, decades into the future, that we have less than 5 years worth of available EDUs, it would automatically require an annual update to the board. So just, again, to provide a fail-safe. The other aspect that I do want to draw attention to is that this report is basically looking at our water availability that does not take into account infrastructure limitations. Those are evaluated on a development-by-development basis when staff performs hydraulic analysis and whatnot. So this is really looking at available EDUs based on rights, entitlements, contracts, permits, et cetera. But I think we'll have a discussion and come up with a point in the future.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Patrick. Because some people will look at this and say, you're going to build how many houses in El Dorado Hills? Because when they look at an EDU.
Right.
But we'll never, ever come close to that in all probability. Thank you.
Well, I think the other point Patrick made, and maybe deserves restatement, is we could have a lot of water rights in Folsom Lake and no way to get it out.
Correct, yes. Next slide, please. So board options. Option 1, receive and file the 25 report. Other or no action.
Move one.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you very much. Any board comments or questions? Does the board need to take action on extending the
No.
3-year report to 5-year? That's an internal. Okay. Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any public comment?
If members of the public would like to address the board, please refer to the instructions in today's agenda. President Dwyer does not appear. Any members of the public are wishing to speak on action item number 8, option 1, receive and file the 2025 water supply and demand report, moved by Director Penn and seconded by Director Mansfield. I believe we're ready for the vote.
Okay, please vote.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 voting aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much.
President Dwyer? I just want to note that several weeks ago, I was invited up to a tour of proposed Crystal Vista Reserve across from Highway 50 Brewery. The owner is going to donate that land as a community center for hiking and educational purposes. And Patrick walked it, the location with us because they have two 3-inch meters, and just gave him advice on the best, use of their best meters and water use for the overall anticipated use of that site. So I just want to express my appreciation.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 9. Oh, this is one of those, if you don't want the answer, don't ask the question kind of. All right, thank you. Tank analysis.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
The pictures will tell it all.
They will. We'll go through a couple. So good morning, board. Daniel Goldman. I'm a senior civil engineer here with the district. And as you're aware, we're going to discuss a project funding request for some master planning related to our tanks and reservoirs throughout the service area of the district. All right. So previous board action, there is no previous board action on this particular capital improvement project. However, we do have some relevant discussion that took place during the 2023 and 2024 operating budget, and then the 2023 to 27 financial planning cycle. At that time, a operating budget was approved with tank maintenance as a specific line item, so the need for this was recognized. And then also we recategorized tank recoating as a capital improvement expense rather than an operational expense at that time as well. This capital improvement project was created in June of this year, so just recently as a first step to moving forward with some planning efforts. So quick summary of the issue. We own and operate 46 storage tanks of various construction types, which we will get into throughout the presentation. These are critical assets to all of our systems throughout drinking water, recycled water, and wastewater. And currently, we do not have a comprehensive or up-to-date catalog or planning document to help us prioritize what's going on with these assets and what repairs may be needed. So this project will allow us to go through all of these tanks and basins and incorporate them into more of a long-term district-wide asset management plan. So as I mentioned, 46 assets for discussion here across all 3 of our divisions. Steel tanks make up 36 of these 46 assets. Steel tanks generally are 75 to 100-year life expectancy when they are well maintained, which we will talk about a little bit as well. To keep them well maintained, they often require recoating approximately every 15 years. And when that 15-year interval is not met, we tend to see deferred maintenance issues, expanded repair scopes, increased costs, things like that. Next here we have lined and covered basins, which we'll describe later in the presentation. This makes up 7 of our 46 assets for consideration here. These liners and covers have a 20 to 30-year life expectancy, and they have to be replaced at the end of their useful life. There's only so much repair that can be done. And then concrete tanks, a small portion of what we're talking about here, just 3 of the 46 assets. These are 75-plus year assets with very little intervention required, kind of the low maintenance, high upfront cost. So the next few slides will give you kind of a flavor of what we have throughout the district as far as different construction types. Here we have Reservoir 4. This is an active construction project for recoating and structural repairs at this time. These pictures are before the scope started. On the left, we have the internals of the tank, looking at the ceiling. You can see some coating failure, as well as some steel corrosion, just rust, essentially, you can see behind the white coating. And then on the right, we have the tank exterior. You can see some UV degradation to that external paint and coating. We'll go to the next slide. And then we have Reservoir 7A here. This is also part of our current construction scope. On the left, you can see some severe coating failure, as well as some very significant metal corrosion, steel corrosion on the ceiling of the tank and the girders supporting the ceiling. And on the right, we have the exterior of both 7A and 7B. With 7A being the tank in the distance, you can kind of see the rust streaks running down there, just indicating it's time for us to do some maintenance. And then finally, before we move off of the topic of steel tanks, just for a visual reference, these are two examples of bolted steel tanks. Those previous tanks were welded steel tanks. So the only difference here is these seams are bolted together rather than welded together, but very similar maintenance needs as the welded steel tanks. So a bit more detail about these steel tank assets. Our current maintenance status, we have 20 of our 36 steel tanks that have reached or exceeded the 15-year interval for recommended recoating or rehabilitation. So as we mentioned, we do see deferred maintenance issues when we exceed that in many cases. And then I have some cost reference here for the Reservoir 4 and 7 project that I was mentioning. We have a contract with FD Thomas at present to perform structural and coating rehabilitation to Reservoir 4 and 7A. And you can see those costs there. We have a $6 million contract. $3.5 million, or about 60% of that, is in the what I would call routine recoating portion of that scope of work. And then about 40%, or $2.5 million, is the structural portion to replace roofs and structural components.
And that's for 2 tanks?
That is for 2 tanks. You could almost call it 2.5. We're doing some minor work at 7B, but 2 tanks is a good number there to think about that. So lined and covered basins, we have 2 examples up on the screen here. On the left, we have Reservoir 1. On the right, Reservoir 11. So these are floating hypalon cover basins, so essentially a floating plastic cover to separate the drinking water from the atmosphere and external contaminants. And then on the bottom of these ponds, essentially is a simple way to describe them, there's another liner that separates the water from the earth. So it's a fully isolated system, just like a tank. So we'll go to the next slide. So these floating covers and the liners that go with them, again, they have about a 30-year life expectancy in operation. Our current status, we have original liners in operation that have been installed between 1962 and 1977, so well beyond that expected lifespan.
They're still young.
Yeah. And then the floating covers that we have in service, they have been replaced at one point in the life of these reservoirs, but that was between 1985 and 1992. So even those covers have exceeded that 30-year high end of that life expectancy. We have a list and a table here at the bottom just for your kind of reference, but we'll use Reservoir 1 for discussion a bit here as far as that increasing operation and maintenance note goes. So at present, we have some issues with Reservoir 1 and the liner there, which is requiring increased staff attention. So we have distribution and operations staff that are visiting Reservoir 1 every day, 7 days a week. So they're performing maintenance events, they're taking samples, they're overseeing subcontracted repairs. So it's quite a large effort to be having someone spending 2 to 3+ hours a day visiting that reservoir. When we consider that level of effort, we started looking at replacement for the Reservoir 1 hypalon liner and cover. What we have seen to date is a budgetary level estimate of just over $2 million for the liner and cover replacement there. So that does not include any type of earthwork, which may be required depending on what's going on beneath the liners, things we can't see. So when you take that $2 million estimate into account, you're around $750,000 per million gallon of storage. And that's kind of the purpose of this table here is you look at our reservoir capacities, they go anywhere from about 1 million to 5 million gallons, and you can take that 750 per million gallon and kind of come up with the conclusion that this would cost a lot of money to just go in and do all these replacements. So just keeping that in mind and kind of reinforces why we do need a planning document to help us through all this.
Would the hope be to replace them with concrete or steel tanks?
So that would be a part of the analysis we'd be conducting here to determine what's the most cost-effective solution, whether it's a replacement in kind or moving to a different technology or construction type.
Okay.
And then lastly, before we move into kind of a different subject matter, the concrete tanks we have throughout the district, only 3 of them. They're located at Reservoir 12 and then Reservoir A. These were installed between 2002 and 2005 and have not required any major maintenance to date.
And are those uncoated?
They're concrete, so they don't require their.
And does that raise the pH so at all the?
No, we don't have any water quality issues with the concrete
Thanks.
tanks. So just a visual here to kind of show you the expanse of where our tanks and reservoirs are located throughout the district. The blue cylinders represent water division or water system tanks. We have wastewater in green, so just at the Deer Creek and El Dorado Hills facilities. And then the purple tanks you see there, those are recycled water system tanks. The red labels indicate active projects. So Reservoir 4 and Reservoir 7, as I mentioned, those are in construction. Bridalwood is in the final stages of design and is anticipated to go to construction in late 2026. So the scope of work and objectives for this particular project. We want to bring in engineering support to review all relevant inspection documents and reports. So we have a number of third-party generated reports related to corrosion and structural integrity of tanks and things like that. For select tanks, we also have our routine reports from operations staff performing inspections on these tanks on a regular basis, which includes inspection reports, photos, videos, dive reports, things like that. All of that information will be reviewed and compiled into a detailed asset inventory, something that's easy for district staff to reference quickly. And then we can generate improvement recommendations, so scope and cost descriptions from there. So what that gives us is an all-encompassing master planning document. The objective of creating this document is, again, to understand the current conditions of all of our tanks and reservoirs and have it easily referenceable. Also understand the impact of water chemistry on corrosion mechanisms that are operating within these tanks, which could shed some light on repair and operational strategy. We also want to identify critical versus non-critical repair scopes and strategies, so wants versus needs, to understand where we need to go. With those cost descriptions and the scopes, we can reconcile this with the capital improvement plan that we're always working on and incorporate that again into a district-wide strategy to maintain all of our assets. So we issued a request for proposal on May 30th of this year. We had proposals returned to us in July, and we received proposals from Loomis & Associates, Verdantis, and V&A Consulting Engineers. So we'll walk through the costs from each proposer here. You can see Loomis & Associates as the low proposer, just under 170. Verdantis at 223, and then there's quite a gap there to V&A, which I'll talk. Yeah, I'll speak to that a little bit. They're a bit of an outlier there at 800,000, of course. So first, I want to just state that all three of these proposals were very complete. They had impressive resumes, strong project teams proposed, a lot of good relevant experience. So all three proposals were very well put together. The discrepancy there between V&A and the others, I think, largely has to do with part of the RFP. We had the option for the proposer to submit a non-disclosure agreement and then receive sample files for a handful of tanks. We received those NDAs and provided files to Loomis and Verdantis. V&A did not return that NDA, so they did not receive or review those example documents, and I think those were critical in developing the number of labor hours that it was going to take to perform this desktop review of all of our information. Additionally, they just had a kind of an expanded scope. They had a lot of travel time and there were a lot of field visits that we weren't asking for, didn't quite think were necessary. So at the end of the day, all three proposers were qualified, we feel, and we're recommending award to Loomis & Associates. So quick slide on funding here. We have the engineering services from Loomis & Associates at $169,000. As well as $30,000 in capitalized labor for engineering staff to work through this project with them, bringing us to a total of $199,070. And then funding for this project, of course, spans across our different systems, so it would be provided according to the number of tanks per enterprise fund. So that brings me to board options. Option 1, award a contract to Loomis & Associates in the not-to-exceed amount of $169,070. For engineering services for the tank and reservoir master planning project, and authorize project funding of $30,000 for capitalized labor for a total funding request of $199,070 for the tank and reservoir master planning project, project number 25032. And our recommendation is option 1.
I'll move option 1.
Thank you, Director Day.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Director Anzini. Any other board comments?
Just, to the public, this just seems like a mundane item,
Yeah.
but this is so critical to the integrity of our system. And, You know, this is like that Fram oil filter ad, you know, pay me now or pay me later, and now we're at the pay me later stage. So,
Unfortunately, true. Yep. Any other board comments? I'll make one, just an observation. We're going to pay $200,000 for the consultant to come tell us that we need $30 million in our capital improvement plan to do this. But that's okay. You know, we need to know that, and we need a way to prioritize those tanks so that we can get on with it. So sometimes it's tough to ask a question, but we need to ask it and we need the answer. Any public comment?
If members of the public would like to address the board, please refer to the instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. President Dwyer does not appear. There are any members of the public wishing to speak on action item number 9, option 1, moved by Director Day and seconded by Director Anzini. I believe we're ready for the vote.
Okay, please vote.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye, motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Daniel. Well
Thank you.
done. Okay. Moving on to action item number 10. Modeling.
Good morning, President Dwyer and members of the board. Elizabeth Leeper, Senior Deputy General Counsel for the district. And I'm going to be providing a project update regarding our Water Right Permit 212 project, as well as seeking an award for a new hydrologic modeling contract and associated funding. So there has been quite a few board items related to this project. So for purposes of this presentation, I want to just highlight kind of the origin story of our modeling contract. So there was a modeling contract to Zanjero back in 2020, as well as a contract to our environmental consultant, AECOM, in 2020 as well to prepare the environmental impact report. Since that time, we have been in front of the board a variety of times, most recently back in December of last year. And so today will be the latest and greatest. And so summary of issue, as you're aware, the district is pursuing a water rights project to add a point of diversion and place of storage to our existing water right permit 212. That is through a change petition process with the State Water Resources Control Board. At this time, to continue to advance this important project, we do need a new modeling contract to support any additional modeling as we move forward. And so we are going to be seeking an award of that contract as well as funding for the contract itself as well as for ongoing outside legal services. So I am going to briefly give a project overview. I like to give kind of a self-contained presentation, so I will provide a brief project overview just for context. I will provide an update on our California Environmental Quality CEQA environmental review, as well as the action today for the contract award and funding. And then I am going to briefly touch on next steps in terms of what we can expect for this project moving forward. So friendly reminder in terms of what is the project. First, we have to start with our existing water right permit 212. So this allows a consumptive use and diversion of up to 17,000 acre feet per year. It's a very dynamic water right that involves both direct diversion, diversion to storage, as well as releases from storage in our Project 184 reservoirs. Importantly, right now we are limited to our consumptive diversion at Folsom Reservoir. And then in terms of the storage rights, we have storage rights in 3 reservoirs, Caples, Aloha, and Silver. And the water right specifies storage in each of those, as well as a cumulative storage total of approximately 30,000 acre feet per year. In terms of what is motivating the current project, so there are some constraints on the ability to effectively utilize the existing water right. So this picture displays the kind of challenge. So we have our service area in the lovely green, and then we have the hatched area, which is essentially the area that we can effectively serve out of Folsom Reservoir. So as you can see, it's quite constrained in terms of where we can currently effectively utilize Permit 212 water. And what our planning documents show, particularly our urban water management plan, we continue to grow in terms of the population and demands that we will have to meet in the future. And so we are looking to how can we effectively meet those future growing demands? And what we've determined is that a portion of Permit 212 will most effectively be utilized if we seek an upstream point of diversion so that we can more flexibly use this water supply. And so those are the objectives of the proposed project. So first and foremost, we have a responsibility to meet those future water demands as identified in our long-term water supply planning documents. And then in addition, it is expensive to pump water uphill. And our diversion out of Folsom does require quite a bit of energy costs. And so we are looking to reduce the costs of conveyance and delivery moving forward by relying on more of a gravity flow system. And so nature working with us instead of against us. And then, of course, the future is going to be dynamic. We want to make sure that we are continuing to be flexible in the systems that are available to us so that we can reliably meet water demands moving forward. And we are looking to optimize our existing water rights. It's not easy to get a new water right in California, so we want to make sure that we're optimizing the ones we already have.
I think that's a key point. This is not requesting additional water rights. This is just requesting taking those rights that we have and diverting them up higher so we can use gravity as opposed to paying PG&E $5 million a year to
Yes.
pump out of Folsom Lake.
Yes, that is an important point, which is why it's called a change petition. It's changing the use of an existing water right. It's not seeking new water.
Thank you.
For the proposed project itself, so what are we seeking to do? We are seeking two primary changes to the existing water right. So one will be an additional authorized point of diversion at our El Dorado diversion dam, which is essentially at Kybers. And then important for this project, we are seeking an additional place of storage in Jenkinson Lake. The idea would be that we would basically share in that cumulative storage that's already established under the water right. We would maintain the existing diversion at Folsom. So we're not trading diversions, we're basically adding a point of diversion, and the vision would be that we would be able to essentially share the 17,000 acre feet amongst those diversions and then share the existing storage. Those are both very important aspects from a water right standpoint. We can't expand the water right, but we can flexibly utilize within those parameters. Next slide, please. So just a little bit more detail. The nice thing about this project is we already have diversion and conveyance facilities at Kybers. So we currently exercise other water rights at this location. So if and when we obtain the change petition order, we actually would be able to essentially start operating under this project tomorrow with the existing infrastructure. One slight nuance here is that we wanted to make sure that we were matching the existing max diversion rate of the permit, which is 156 cubic feet per second. Currently, the diversion and conveyance capacity at Kybers is 145. So if we wanted to actually get up to that full 156, there would have to be some improvements along that conveyance route. But we could start operating Permit 212 diversions at this location tomorrow. And so as I mentioned, we do exercise other water rights at this location. Those water rights are largely for what's called non-consumptive use, which is hydropower use. The reason they're called non-consumptive is because they return to the stream below the powerhouse. So essentially the system is made whole, which is why they're called non-consumptive. what we're doing with this project, I like to think of it, Kybers has an existing straw. That straw has a capacity. As we start to look to meet those future increasing water demands that are consumptive customer demands, we're going to have to sacrifice some of the capacity of that straw from non-consumptive hydropower purposes to consumptive people purposes. So people instead of power is how I like to think about it. And essentially that's where you see the effect of the project. So as we kind of convert from non-consumptive to consumptive, less water is going to be returned below the powerhouse. That's where you start to see the project effect, is below the powerhouse with those diminished return flows. And then I already highlighted what our modeling shows is the primary benefit of this project would be a diversion to storage in Jenkinson Lake. And that's really the, kind of the California challenge, which is water is abundant in cold winter and spring months, and water is in demand in high summer peak demands. So if we're able to divert kind of in those winter and spring months, divert it to storage in Jenkinson, and then we can draw down storage as we move into those peak summer demands. Next slide, please. And you've seen this before. This is just how we could route the water within our system. So I'll start you on the upstream side, which is Kybers. The primary diversion pattern would be a diversion to storage. So that'll be the lower route through Hazel Creek Tunnel into Jenkinson Lake for storage. If we were diverting more under what's called a direct diversion pattern, so essentially real-time diversions to meet real-time demands, we could route this water to our Reservoir 1 water treatment plant, or we could route this water to our Reservoir A water treatment plant. From there, of course, it could be distributed throughout our service area. Next slide. So I'm going to move into our project update. We do have some exciting milestones. Next slide, please. So we released our notice of preparation regarding the environmental impact report a few years ago in 2022. I am pleased to announce that we released the draft EIR for public review and comment on June 11th. We opted for a 60-day public review and comment period. CEQA specifies a 45-day comment period, but given the interest in the project, we thought it was appropriate to provide a longer comment period. We also held an after-hours virtual public meeting on July 16th. It was well attended with over 60 participants and numerous comments and questions. And most recently, last week, we were invited to present at the Cloma Lotus Advisory Committee, which is a committee that is part of the Board of Supervisors. And so we were invited for an after-hour presentation of the project last week, and that was also very well attended. When we were preparing the staff report, we had a comment count at that time. As of this morning, we're at roughly 120 comments received, but it is not uncommon for the bulk of the comments to roll in on the close of the comment period, which is today. So I wouldn't be surprised if that doubles within the next 8 hours. And then a little bit on the environmental document. It is extensive and it is thorough. It contains a whole lot of modeling data, and it examines a variety of resource categories. In particular, we did do some custom analysis for this project. So CEQA has kind of a checklist of standard questions. We felt that given some of the interests and particular areas of concern for this project, we wanted very tailored, specific questions that we were examining. So we did develop specific thresholds of significance regarding whitewater recreation, as well as special status fish species, largely in the lower American River. The document also contains analysis of a variety of alternatives. Those are largely kind of operational alternatives, so looking at a reduced season of diversion, a reduced diversion, a diversion without storage. So essentially looking at what are some other ways that we could operate Permit 2112. It also includes mitigation measures to the extent we identified any potentially significant impacts. Fortunately, after a thorough analysis, we concluded that all environmental impacts can be reduced to a less than significant level. And in particular, the only areas we identified as potentially significant really related to those construction activities that I mentioned for the conveyance improvements. So the mitigation measures are limited to construction-related activities. I did want to highlight, we have been engaged with stakeholder communities throughout this process. Water rights projects can be controversial, and we wanted to make sure that we had an early dialogue with those that could be most potentially impacted by the project. So this is not an exhaustive list of those that we've been in engagement with throughout this process. And we will continue that stakeholder engagement through preparation of the final EIR as well as the change petition process as well. And now I'm going to move into today's action. So as you may recall, there was very extensive hydrologic modeling and temperature modeling performed for this project. This is fundamental to any water rights project in terms of how is our project potentially going to impact the stream system. So as you recall, we have 3 modeling tools, ResSim, CalSim, and SQL. And I just wanted to highlight that because it does inform today's action. So for the last 5 years, we had the pleasure of working with Zanjero to develop the ResSim and CalSim modeling for the project. The good news is that modeling team was able to complete all the modeling for the project, the alternatives, all the modeling necessary for the draft EIR. So that's the good news. The unfortunate news is the 2 primary people that were performing that modeling have since left Zanjero and are not available to perform additional modeling for the project. So we will need a new modeling team, and this is largely twofold. To the extent we need any modeling expertise to respond to comments received on the draft EIR, as well as potentially we may need additional modeling performed in support of the change petition process. So we do need a modeling team on board for this project.
Well, that concerns me because we suddenly have new people. I think modeling is kind of a unique, I'll say science, but maybe there's a lot of art to it too. And so we have a model that was created by 2 principals who are no longer there to respond to any specific questions about the model. And I do understand that Zanjero has been purchased by, who was it? Trinity Consultants. And I guess they didn't make a bid on our project. So.
They did not propose in response to this RFP.
Right. So it just kind of worries me a little bit that we're doing this handoff to a new modeling group who may want to say, oh, the work they did is no good, we'll have to start over again and do our model, not their model. Is that a valid concern?
You know, I think any transition has some challenges. I think the things we do have going for us, so ResSim and CalSim are industry-wide modeling tools. So the tool itself is not going to be unfamiliar. The project-specific operational, rules are something they are going to have to get familiar with. But we're actually at a pretty good point in the project to make a transition. And so I do think the modeling team is going to be able to, speak the language of modeling and get familiar
And
with.
respond to all the input we got. Okay.
Yes.
We'll see.
Next slide, please. So to get a new modeling team, or to enlist a new modeling team, we issued a request for qualifications and proposals. We received 3 proposals as summarized in the table below. Next slide, please. We did determine that the lowest proposal also provided the best value to the district, which is MBK Engineers. They are widely known and respected in the water industry. They're actually assisting the district in other efforts currently. And they have very extensive experience with these modeling tools. They have a very experienced modeling team, and they had strong indications of kind of cost control and management. The reason I'm coming to the board now is it's very important that we get this modeling team on board, they get familiar with the model, and that we're well positioned to start responding to comments received on the draft DIR. So we had to make some assumptions that we told in the RFP. We essentially said, here's some assumptions about the level of effort that may be necessary. Ultimately, the scope of services for this contract is largely going to be driven by the extent of the comments received on the draft DIR. So I will say there is a potential for a contract change order once we truly get a sense of the level of effort necessary. Next slide, please. And then,
Before we move to the legal,
yes.
the county water agency is also doing extensive modeling in the watershed. How do these relate with, how does this effort relate with their modeling?
Yes, so the El Dorado County Water Agency, they recently released their draft DIR for the water reliability project. They did elect to do cumulative modeling of their proposed project as well as the proposed Permit 212 project. So they do have some cumulative modeling in their document. We didn't feel that there was sufficient detail or information about their project to accurately model a cumulative analysis. So our modeling is limited to our project, and then we do qualitatively look at how the water reliability project could impact environmental resources. So both projects do deal with diversions on the South Fork of the American River, so there's going to be wide interest in both projects.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
Kind of.
I'm happy to try again.
So by those statements, will there be a conflict of interest between the two?
I'm gonna defer to our general counsel on that question.
That's a good question. The county water agency and EID have identified issues that need to be resolved, issues of conflict between the approaches that they've taken. And we are in the process of working toward that resolution. In fact, I've been in communication with the county's Water Rights Council just as recently as last week to facilitate that resolution. So there is the potential for conflict between the two proposals, the two projects. And like I said, we're working towards that. And I anticipate that we will succeed in doing so.
Thank you for that comment. If I remember rightly, 7 years ago, there was a contract or a mutual aid agreement between, it was called EDWAPA, or what was that? El Dorado County Water Power Agreement, right? And
Authority,
that was with
yes.
the county and with EID. That was abandoned by the county, if I remember rightly. And we pursued getting an agreement going again, and we were denied several times. This is kind of a unique situation, but it seems to me there's a conflict.
As I said, there is a potential for conflict. You are generally correct that previously there was the El Dorado Water and Power Authority, which was a joint powers authority that was comprised not just of EID and the county water agency, but of the county and of Georgetown Divide Public Utility District. So there were 4 participating agencies. That entity, the EDWAPA, was dissolved under the terms of the formation agreement. And since that time, we have been working with the county water agency to try and resolve some of our differences. And we're not done with that work yet, that some of those conflicts remain, and we will continue. I'm getting a very peculiar smile from one of our directors here, but no, there is a lot of history. There's a lot of background, but I agree with you, Director Anzini, that there is a potential conflict, and we're working toward resolving that.
Thank you.
And then, as I mentioned, we are also seeking funding for outside legal services. So we do have contracts with 2 subject matter experts. One is regarding CEQA and the environmental review process, and then we have our longstanding water rights legal counsel assisting with the change petition process. And so we are seeking additional funding to continue those efforts. So in total, here is the funding request. The funding source is water FCCs. And then in full transparency, I did want to disclose essentially the cost to date. So we have spent over $2 million on this project over approximately the last 9 years. To put that in context, if you compare power costs to treat and convey water out of Folsom versus comparing that to either our Res A or Res 1 treatment plants, and the volume of water we're talking about, which is 17,000 acre feet, that $2 million is essentially 1 year's of power savings if we were able to deliver this water out of either Res 1 or Res A. So these projects take time, they take money, but I think the potential ROI on this project is still very evident. Next slide, please. And then I just wanted to briefly touch on next steps. So still have a ways to go on this project. So we are going to close the comment period today. We will then basically review the comments received and determine the level of effort necessary to prepare the final EIR, which is largely going to be developing those responses to comments. If we determine that that level of effort requires a change order for our environmental consultant, we are planning to come back to the board on September 22nd for that change order and associated funding request. We will then be engaged in preparing the final EIR. And then concurrently, we are targeting a submittal of the water right change petition to the State Water Resources Control Board, either the end of this year or early 2026. And then I will not try to estimate the time necessary for the water rights portion of this. I think it could easily be a couple years, and that will largely depend on any protests that we receive on the change petition and whether there's any necessary hearing proceedings in light of those protests. So,
A couple of years, they're fast tracking it now.
Exactly. And then my favorite part is the part where we obtain the order approving the change petitions. So I look forward to that. All right, so the board option today is award a contract to MBK Engineers in the not to exceed amount of $97,154 for hydrologic modeling support and authorize project funding of $40,000 for outside legal services for a total funding request of $137,154 for the permit 212 change and point of diversion, project number 16003. We are recommending option 1.
Should we run out and check the mail, see how many public responses we got before we take action?
The email's the most accurate count.
Option 1.
Thank you, Director Day.
I'll second.
Thank you, Director Mansfield. Any other board comments? Yes, Director Anzini.
Yeah, I have a lot of concern about this, and I know this is something we've been discussing for several years. And the preponderance of this whole thing is we have several agencies going for this permit, or as we would call it, this very valuable permit, which has been the basis of EIDs, managing to be able to provide water to our whole group of people. I don't have a problem with listening or reading or how many protests letters we get. My concerns are what is going to happen with the conflict of interest. And I would like, and I will support this because I've been supporting this right along, but I would like to see a continued and expedient resolution to working with the El Dorado County agency. What happened then was unexplainable, and it was never, the county really never answered back, the county water agency, and they've had certainly changes in their leadership. However, we still have to work that. We just amended an agreement further up in our agenda, working with them regarding certain maintenance projects that, you know, that was a mutual aid kind of thing. We work well with the county, but this is an issue with the county water agency, which is a little bit different. And I really want to pursue a friendlier option rather than an option where there could be an ownership issue. And that's my biggest concern.
Yes, thank you. I believe the district has been consistently committed to collaboration with the El Dorado County Water Agency, and I think General Manager Van Diar is actively trying to maintain or improve that relationship.
That has been a priority. I've already had a meeting with Rebecca Gao from the County Water Agency. I've known her previously in my role with the Water Forum, and the meeting was related to EID and the Water Agency. We're both on the same page in terms of working together to figure out what the solution will be. And that is a key objective for us as we engage with legal counsel as well. So we're trying to work through that process.
Thank you. Any other, Director Day.
Just going to say, I think that I'm still a legal member at WAPA. And I think we could reconvene that board and we could solve these issues really quickly. I said that for you, so.
Okay, any other board comment?
Sure. Gravity is our friend. Absolutely. Close to $10 million to PG&E a year is not our friend. Storing water at higher elevations is our friend. The intertie makes us more robust, and this adds to, again, the robustness of the district. I see the biggest issues, you know, as some diminished flows below the powerhouse for rafting as a potential, hopefully de minimis impact, but we're so small in the grand scheme of things. Keeping those temperatures low is a friend to the environment. And it's just a long process. We know that water rights issues, you know, are painful. And I don't know if it's appropriate to ask if there's a sense of what the general substance of the comments are at this point, or should we just wait until it closes? I mean, I presume it's rafting. I'm sure a lot of it's boilerplate and things like that.
Yes. So typically, a lot of the most detailed and substantive comments are submitted on the deadline. So to date, the majority of the comments have been very brief and have been focused on potential impacts to whitewater recreation. I do anticipate that we'll get more extensive comments today. So I don't think we don't have the universe of comments as of now.
Right. And finally, I just see there's chatter out there that's just wrong, you know, regarding this project. So hopefully we'll be able to resolve it and move forward.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Any other board comments? Any public comment on this item?
If members of the public would like to address the board, please refer to the instructions in today's agenda.
It's John Wilson from Shingle Springs. I've been aware of Okay, can you hear me now? I've been aware of the project for quite some time, at least the desire to divert water upstream. And I understand the economics of it, and I understand how efficient it is from your operating standpoint. I do have some concerns about how it actually is going to work. And my concerns are, for instance, what happens to the American River between Kybers and the powerhouse? And again, the Rafters' primary concern, what happens from the powerhouse down? I happen to be a fisheries guy. I'm concerned about the Kybers to the powerhouse section and also with the rafters from the section down below. As I look at numbers, and I don't know how this is going to work, and I assume that this is probably going to be answered by your modeling report, that right now, today, for instance, we've got 90 cubic feet a second coming down the American and the Silver Fork to Kybers. You're diverting 30 into the conveyance and 60 cubic feet a second downstream. You're talking about the capacity of 146 cubic feet a second now, and increasing that, I believe, by 11 cubic feet a second, something like that, to 145 to 156. I would assume you're doing that because you're planning on using that 156 cubic feet a second at times. Now, I wouldn't expect that's going to be any problem at all between November and, say, July 1st, because you've just got an excess amount of water running down through that system. My concern is, do you have, and I think you've got minimum flows coming down the Silver Fork and, I'll speak up, the Silver Fork and the South Fork of the American River. Do you have a minimum flow requirement from Kybers to the powerhouse? And I'd like to know what that is, and is that similar to what's going down there now? Because obviously, if you don't change the regime from July 1st to November, and you got 60 CFS going from that, from a practical standpoint, that makes no difference from a fisheries standpoint. If that makes sense. So anyway, that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
Great questions, a lot to unpack there. I will say the draft DIR, which is on our website, contains very extensive modeling, and it looks at both impacts to biological resources, fish species, as well as whitewater rafting. We do have a minimum in-stream flow obligation currently under our FERC license that is at Kybers. Essentially, we have to meet flows past Kybers, so that would remain in place. And then the actual diversion pattern under the project, there's a lot of operational and regulatory rules controlling that diversion, so I would just refer you to the document itself so that you can really see how that would vary over time. The draft environmental document does look at max potential effect, so we modeled the whole 156. In reality, often this would be shared with Folsom. So we're showing kind of the max level of impact, but in reality, it's likely going to be something less than that. We just wanted to make sure we covered the potential effects. But I would refer you to the modeling itself because there's a lot of detail. So on our website, we have a project-specific on our website for Permit 2112. And I can speak with you afterwards as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment?
If additional members of the public would like to address the board on action item number 10, please refer to the instructions in today's agenda. President Dwyer does not appear there are any additional members of the public wishing to speak on action item number 10. Option 1, moved by Director Day and seconded by Director Mansfield. I believe we're ready for the vote.
Okay, thank you. Please vote.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you all very much. Okay, we have any assignments?
We have a couple direction staff, no review of assignments today.
Okay, thank you. I would like to request that we get a periodic update on our capital improvement projects, the ones, especially ones that have been completed, saying, okay, you know, how did we do on the key factors, cost, schedule, performance? Did we run into any issues? Just as they're completed, and that would only be for capital improvement projects. So, any other comments, questions? Okay, meeting adjourned at 10:50.